Okay, we're going to be tasting three of your products today. We're going to start off with the cherry spritz, this little
Mhm.
fellow here. So tell me about this. This is the kind of thing. I mean, I always like that kind of shade of pink, but I'm not sure if it's the first thing I would rush to if it was on the shelf. So tell me about this.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, we only really made spirits and beer. We hadn't really got into the canned cocktail thing or market segment. And then right before the pandemic, we were in Florida on vacation, and there's this fad down there, which I don't think which you can no longer call a fad, but a product that was becoming very popular, and it was called White Claw.
Yes,
Cheers.
yeah, yeah. Cheers.
And we saw it really taking hold. And we're like, we don't see anything like this back home in our Ontario market. So we're like, okay, well, we have the beer side. We're canning product for the beer side. Why can't we just make a cocktail and can it? So we started playing around, started making seltzers. Those really started to take off. Like we started canning it and be like, if we sit on it for a year, we sit on it for a year. And then sold out in a week. And then the next batch sold out in 24 hours. And then the next batch sold out in 5 hours. And it was like, okay, we're on to something. So we started producing different types of RTDs. And then in the evolution, we wanted to create something for the LCBO that was very much in the seltzer world, but a little bit more flavor.
Yeah.
This one in particular has cherry concentrate, so it has like a subtle
Yes.
pink
Yeah.
hue to it, just to give it a little bit more oomph, I would say, in the flavor world, whereas like a lot of seltzers are a little bit more mild, I would say, in flavor profile. And then we're very nostalgic. So we try and take flavors that we were familiar with as, say, a kid that we were very
Yeah.
fond of.
I can see that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then add, the alcohol side to it and make it something that's super relatable and again, nostalgic, and easy to enjoy.
I think you've got the sugar acid balance absolutely perfect on this because I don't gravitate towards sweeter stuff. What is
Mhm.
the sugar on this? Do you have that in your memory banks?
Yeah, like the sugar content, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's 14 grams of sugar,
Okay.
with a little bit of lemon concentrate and citric acid too, just to help blend things, but then also make it a little bit more shelf stable is how we
14
operate.
grams per liter
Per can.
per can. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. We were talking about 355 mil. Okay. All right. It's interesting
Yeah.
because the malic acid in there, along with that kind of perception of the cherry from the cherry concentrate, does balance that out. So it
Yeah.
doesn't taste too sweet at all.
No, like malic acid's really nice for that because it has a distinctly green apple flavor,
Yeah.
so it tends to give you this real ripeness. And one thing I really like about this is it balances that cherry and gives it this like super fresh, like
Yeah. It
perfectly in
lifts it
season
completely. Yeah.
cherry, but elevated, right? So
Where is this most popular? Where have you found your most success with this product?
LCBO.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so the LCBO has this on shelves. We're in about 400 or so stores with it right now. And it does fairly well for like a producer our size.
Yeah. That, as I said, it's not usually the kind of thing I would pick off the shelf, but that's actually
Mhm.
very pleasant. Good job on that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's interesting, right? Because the first smell and flavor I find with this, and I get this reaction a lot, and it's my reaction as well. It smells very intense, and you have the
Yeah,
first
for
sip,
sure.
and you're like, I'm not sure. But once it coats your palate that first time, the second sip is a little bit more enjoyable, and the third, and then I find you just like find yourself continuing to reach for it. I know that sounds very cliche, but
No, 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 I hear
yeah,
you. I understand what you're saying there. Okay, we'll move on to something that's usually more my territory, which is beer. This is the Hell Premium Lager, 4.8.
yeah.
So a different kind of can design here. Tell us a little bit about
Mhm.
the history of this one here.
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate to get invited to a lot of festivals over in Europe to pour our beer. We do a little bit of exporting over there, but we have a lot of friends in the beer industry. The beer industry is extremely small and tight
Yeah.
knit. So in our travels, one of our favorite beers of all time is a beer called Augustiner Hell,
Yeah.
or it's like a Helles style from Germany. You can't really get the beer outside of Germany, but it's our desert island beer, one that we would have
Yeah, yeah.
forever. And so when we went about making a style, a lot of our beers at the time were a higher alcohol percentage, as you'll see with the next one we're
Yes.
drinking. And so we wanted something a little bit more drinkable, so on the lower side, sub 5%. We started thinking about, like, how can we pull in other products that we really love. We started thinking about this Helles that we really love from Germany, and started playing around with our own version of this. So Hell is our kind of modern take on that classic Augustiner Helles that we're very fond of. A little lower alcohol percentage than the traditional, but to us, very drinkable and something that we want to enjoy all the time, which was kind of the idea.
And
So,
what is the hop profile that we have on this one here?
oh, it's super mild. And can't remember the exact hop bill on this. They're all noble hops. I can't remember the exact ones off the top of my head. It's only one or two in the bowl, very mild, not real heavy dry
Yeah, yeah,
hop at
I can see it.
all. Again, just very traditional. Yeah.
And there's a nice multi character in this as well, right?
Hmm. Which is what you kind of want. Like, I don't know, a lot of those classic Hellas, they're malty without being extremely crispy. They have a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah,
more
yeah.
body, a little bit more texture to it. And at 4.8%, we wanted something that still had a little bit of like backbone to it. It wasn't
Mhm.
just like a light beer. A lot of the macro beers that we have that are light beers, they feel very thin in body,
Yep,
and
sure.
we
Yep.
definitely didn't want that.
So I
Yeah.
originally come from Scotland, and because hops didn't grow in Scotland, perhaps they do now with climate change, but they didn't historically. They didn't. There's a malt band that goes across the certain latitudes, and then there's a hop band that goes like that. You probably know this, but
Mhm.
Scotland is missed out by this hop ban completely. And they weren't going to be, at that point, they would never have been purchasing any hops from England. They'd never buy anything English.
Yeah, no,
So,
absolutely not.
so the traditional Scottish beers relied much more, they focused more upon the malt character. So I grew up with
Mhm.
maltier beers and do seek that out, to be honest with them. Most of the German beers that I enjoy tend to have that, the malt tends to dominate rather than the hops. But this is very, very
Mhm.
pleasant. I've tasted your beers before because Hart's Tavern in Kimberley,
Yeah, yeah.
my local, Andrew there, I occasionally go down there and buy a few cans for the house. And he's fobbed these off on me quite a few times. I say fob in a very nice way, but he said,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I have tasted this previously, and the City Slicker IPA, which we're going to get onto. But yeah, this is a nice beer. I can see myself drinking a bit more of this. I've been a beer drinker for like a heavy beer drinker for quite some time, and cut back on the beers recently. But I think if I'm going for quality over quantity, I could enjoy some of this for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of what we were going for. I feel like too, in the cycle of beer, I've noticed a lot more of the craft breweries going back to drinking or making and drinking lagers. And I think
Yeah,
that's
yep.
like the natural progression, right? I feel like craft beer, with anyone, you're getting into all these new styles, and it's all this, like, it's all very interesting and exciting. But I mean, if you look at the majority of beer that's consumed in a year globally, the vast majority of it is lager.
Mhm.
And I think that, I think we're headed in a direction similar to what you see in a lot of the classic European beer brewing countries like Germany, where you have large producers and small producers, um, that all make great beer, but it's just kind of that, rather than being like, oh, craft producers and then macro producers.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just kind of like, I think we're headed back in that direction. I think you'll see a lot more lagers and come back in Canadian breweries, anyways, in the short term for sure.
Even from a business perspective, if you're creating something like this that you could drink a fair number of because it's lighter. Although beers like this that we're moving on to, the IPA.
Mhm,
This is coming in
mhm,
at 6.8% alcohol, and most
mhm.
people, they'd have one of those, maybe two of them, and then that would be them done. Um,
Exactly.
I mean, I'm kind of an exception to that rule because I drink quite a few of them, or used to. But the City Slicker IPA, this one here with this
Mhm, mhm.
rather nice old Toronto streetcar on it, is really quite something. I like it with all the graffiti on the side as well. I hadn't noticed that before. You see what I no,
There's actually a little Willibald ad on the streetcar if you're
is
if you're if
there?
you're looking closely. Yeah.
All right, I'll have to look for that. But yeah, so this is like a how would you describe this style of IPA?
Yeah, this is supposed to be kind of like like a New England style or an
Yeah,
East
yeah.
Coast style IPA, I suppose. So it's going to pour very hazy, kind of like this light gold hazy color. It is dry hopped with New Zealand Cascade, Citra, Mosaic, and Eldorado. Um, but it's just kind of this really easy drinking IPA, something that again, like despite the alcohol percentage, something that you could consume a few of. And I would say, going back to just like our philosophy on beer production, but cocktail production too, is like we try and make everything. And obviously it's not always possible, but we try and make everything so that you want to have two of at least.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
else kind of like what's the point? Like it's cool to have the novelty of one, but like we want something that you want to have and then have again, you
Yeah.
know?
Makes sense. Yeah. Um,
So
Now I'm not sure if you're one for pairing beer with food. Would you have any suggestions where I'd probably have the cherry by itself, but these two beers, can you see them at the dinner table?
yeah, I mean, hell with barbecue
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. I think that like multi-character stands up nice to the smoke and complements it really well. City Slicker too, like we like it with barbecue, but at the same time, I could see it working with like Thai food and get some of that spice.
hmm
Anything that's like nice and like citrus forward too pairs nice with the citra hops in there that are also going to be like lime grapefruit leaning. I think that like that combination is really nice, especially like a nice pad thai with like lime spritzed
yeah.
over top with this was like really nice.
It's I think this is very well made because it has that IPA intensity, and that it's the hops are definitely predominant, but it's not too, I don't find it too piney. I don't find it too thick and soupy. I think it has
Yep.
a fair amount of lift to it, so it doesn't tire the palate as immediately as many beers with 6.8% alcohol would. Doesn't taste as sweet as many of those more of those kind of soupy alcoholic IPAs do. Um, Really rather good.
Yeah, I would say that like as far as IPAs go, I would say that our one thing, one aspect of our beers that gets called out a lot, and which we are very proud of, is that kind of what you're alluding to is they're not super sweet. Again, I feel like the sweetness is nice in small quantities, but
Yeah, yeah,
overall, like I feel like bogs you down a bit. And then the other thing I would say is I feel like our beers hide alcohol very well,
for
can
sure.
be which is something that we're proud of, but also something that can be very dangerous.
Sure.
So tread lightly, but I think that's something that's really a point of pride for us because it is something that's hard to do, and it's very easy for a 7% beer, almost 7% beer, to taste like that. Whereas I don't feel like this does at all. So
I used to drink a fair bit of beer like this, but I've had to cut back a bit because I occasionally suffer from gout, and this would be quite a major trigger for that.
it
So
would be a contributor for sure.
yeah, sure, yeah, yeah. Hey, so what's next for Willibald?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, one reason that we started this business initially was to create whiskey. So we're always putting down cask of whiskey.
Right.
We have about 400 casks of whiskey put down, and so we've been working on some small batch releases. So that's always going to be something that we look forward to and work on. I feel like that's a constant progression that you never master, but you're constantly working on improving.
So when's the ETA
Um,
for the whiskey program then?
so we've released a handful of whiskeys so
Yep.
far. The most recent being a whiskey called Saplord that we released in the spring to coincide with the maple syrup sap run. So it was a whiskey we finished in maple syrup casks, hence the name. And yeah, so that was really great. We'll probably do another version of that for next year. But a lot of the releases we're talking somewhere between 2 and 10 barrels, so pretty small batches. And usually we let the whiskey do the talking in terms of what the concept's going to be. So we'll taste through it every 3-4 months, some of the inventory, and be like, this is ready for a project. Needs to sit down for a little bit of a longer nap, and then we kind of make that call. So I
It's
don't
basically
have
it's product driven and not marketing driven. So the marketing comes after you to do the tasting.
exactly. So the way that the rest of the brand has developed, I mean, right now, like with the beer and canned cocktail production, like the cherry spritz, we are at our absolute capacity right now, which is both a great and maddening thing all simultaneously. But the nice thing that comes with that is that it takes a lot of pressure off the whiskey program, and we're purists when it comes to whiskey. We have a real affinity for American styles, a lot of styles that are overproof in small batches and a little bit more niche. And so the fact that we're able to put those whiskey styles down and then not have the pressure to release it gives us a lot of flexibility in where, when, and how we release those products. So we try and let the liquid decide ultimately when, because we don't have that pressure to have to sell that product if we don't want to, which is a great position to be in right now.
It's interesting. I think many consumers don't realize the investment it takes to start a whiskey program, because I'm guessing that you did what most artisanal distilleries do, and because you have the still, you make your whiskey, you're aging it, but then you're basically, you need a revenue stream. Hence, there is vodka, there is gin, which you can turn that over a few times, right? I'm guessing that's the route that you took.
Yeah, that is the route that we took. Unfortunately, our piggy banks weren't large enough to support purely a whiskey program, so we had to have something coming in for revenue, and that's the route we decided to go. But those things ended up taking off and actually becoming what our business is today.
Wow.
So although the whiskey portion is a small portion of our business, it's definitely very much a passion project.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to taste through some of your spirits in the future for sure, and maybe I'll make it out to Ayr at some point. I'm not that far away.
That would be great.
Yeah, it'd be a nice country.
That'd be great.
Hey, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate you joining us at Good Food Revolution. And here's to you, Cam. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. See ya.
Bye for now.